council is in committee meetings tonight. We'll have two, the first one being planning and development, and that will be followed by finance and personnel. So the first meeting, planning and development, is chaired by Council Member Chris Fall with members Jeff Reisner, Sarah Grace, and Arian Smedley. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. First, we have a somewhat long agenda, but we can, it's very interesting, and it's the end of a lot of projects that have been bubbling and stuff. So the first one is the University Estates, the TIF, that has been recommended from the administration in the area of the University Estates for a new development. A TIF, a tax incremental financing, is something that we use out on East State Street. And we have our planner Paul Logue, here to also describe some of it. I think that this has been working for a while, and then COVID happened, and so it's now coming back up. This particular program for these units, these housing units up in University Estates, also has been recommended by the Affordable Housing Commission in their strategy planning document that the council has adopted. So without any further ado, Paul, would you like to describe it more? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Council Representative Fall. Good evening, Council. Paul Logue, planner for the City of Athens. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be present this evening. Not sure how long we want to spend on this, so I'll try to be brief. But to what Council Representative Fall said, she's correct that back in 2019, the Affordable Housing Commission gave some recommendations to City Council about strategies that the Affordable Housing Commission thought would be effective means of trying to create affordable housing within our community. There's a few things that the Affordable Housing Commission noted about the challenges of having affordable housing in our city. Two of the big ones was had to do with the city's zoning code and our subdivision regulations, which are essentially designed to build detached single-family residential homes on what are on larger lots. And so, you know, the land, the home, all of those things cost a lot of money so affordability is lost. Also, when we're building new subdivisions in Athens, there's infrastructure that the developer is required to cover the cost for. So that includes streets, curb, gutter, sewer, sidewalks. All of that infrastructure is expected to be borne by the developer, which of course they pass those costs on to the potential home buyers. So when we're requiring larger lots, when we're requiring single family detached, things like that, basically you have to build more infrastructure because of the length of your roads, the length of the frontage of a single family residential lot. And so all those costs are typically carried upon to the buyer. What the Affordable Housing Commission was recommending is there's a strategy under Ohio Revised Code for what's called a residential TIF, tax increment financing, in which a portion of the increased value in property tax is taken and put into the TIF district to cover the cost of that infrastructure. So it covers so that cost is not carried upon to a homeowner. So it covers the cost for streets, curb, gutter, sidewalks, etc. What you've got before you is a copy of the agreement that's been drafted. The city worked closely with representatives from Bricker and Eckler law firm in Columbus, as well as with our law director and with Cornerstone Properties, which is a housing development, local housing developer who was looking to do a project in University Estates. This is what's called if I'm not mistaken, I've got several different files up in front of me, but it's what's called it's a 75% exemption for a period of 10 years, which means that for any increased value in real estate, 75% of the taxes that would typically be paid to the school district, to Athens County, et cetera, that increased collection would be reinvested back into the TIF to cover the financing charges for all that infrastructure. At the end of the 10 years, the TIF is dissolved, and the county, the tax collectors are all of the monies are distributed as they normally would from that point forward. What's important to note that it's only on increased property value. So if you're building, if you've got a single family residential lot that right now is valued at $35,000 or $50,000, that first $50,000 worth of value, as assessed by the county auditor, all of that money would continue to be going towards standard tax breakdown as they would be today. It's only on that increased value. So if you build a home on it and the property is now is sold to somebody for a value of $150,000, then that additional $100,000 in property tax assessment would then be transferred into the TIF, 75% of it, excuse me. Before I go any further, can I answer any questions from members of the Planning and Development Committee?
Right. And I want to especially have Sarah, because she's been working on this too.
Yeah.
So, or Grace, if you have anything to say about it. So
I just want to say that, yes, after lots and lots of research and discussion through the Affordable Housing Commission, this is definitely one of the best tools available to us to increase the number and availability of affordable housing units in our area, and that there's no loss to any entity that would have been receiving some of those property tax dollars. And that's important to keep in mind. It's like whatever was being collected previously, like on the empty lots or whatever, that is still collected and distributed in the same way. And so any entity that was receiving that property tax money continues to receive. And then in the case of a 75%, they'll receive more, because each entity will receive their share of the other 25%. Is that correct, Paul? And yeah. So, and then once the TIF ends, there will be a significant increase in for instance, our school districts. Whereas if these improvements, the buildings, the housing was never put on the property, there would not be an increase in the tax assessment and collection. So it's not a loss to any entity, and will certainly be a benefit in the long run. So, yeah.
And one of the things that should be pointed out is that the units will be universal design, which is good because that helps with senior affordability with seniors, and they're smaller, so they're not meant for 5 different college people living together. So they're definitely a segment that we need. So
right.
Any other questions, Mr. Reisner?
How many units are we talking about?
It's roughly 50, Jeff.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're treating this as a trial. Because we've never done this before. So what the Affordable Housing Commission was kind of looking at, and in my opinion, we know that we've done TIFs for economic development for East State Street. That's how East State Street was widened from 3 to 5 lanes. That's how the infrastructure was built out there to accommodate development. But we've never tried this for housing in the past. In Athens, what we know, again, from the Affordable Housing Commission's position, we're not providing this type of housing that's needed. It's a barrier to economic development. We can't, and so we've had some problems with how do we make affordable housing. And another nice thing about this is that it's designed so that for the first several years that it cannot be converted into rental housing either.
For the first 5.
Correct. Yeah.
Member Smedley.
Thanks, Member Fall. Appreciate everyone's work on this, and it sounds like a really great creative way to try to address some of our problems and challenges that we've had. Do we have a better map to show what parcels it's capturing? The maps in the documentation was a little hard for me to figure out where it was.
I
Thank
can
you.
get you one if I don't have one available immediately though, if that's okay. But I'm happy to share one with Debbie Walker and she can send it out.
Okay, great. Other council members? Mayor Patterson?
I just wanted to mention that I believe it was at a Ohio Municipal League meeting back in 2016, which is when I first learned about these non-traditional tips and what can be used with them. As Paul had indicated, that we have a traditional TIF, which is East State Street. And I was very keen on wanting to have something like this, use something like this in the city of Athens. I think this pilot is a smart one to work forward to see how we can really remove that barrier that's going to get in front of a developer to where they're not going to want to, it doesn't pencil out to build 50 units and to have to build the streets and all the utilities. It's just in this day and age, and with some of the current lot sizes that we've got in areas that are ready for development, it became a significant barrier. And so with having something like this to where the money that is captured under that 75% capture helps the developer to offset, defray those costs. And actually, as long as it's being built to our specifications for the roadway itself and sewer and water and storm, we believe that this is a good tool moving forward. And if successful, this is something we can certainly be using elsewhere in the city where we know there's developable land. But again, the challenges that get in the way of a developer are the overall cost of a project if they had to build out everything and try and make it work.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that being a model is a really important thing, and we are keen on being models in Athens. It would also be something that could be used for redevelopment or redensification. And that's something that this particular project is, that it's making the most use of that property that it's going to be on, because they're townhomes and that they're relatively small, those. And that's another reason why it can be something that is for the affordable housing part of it too. So any other, Beth?
Perhaps this was mentioned before, but what is the square footage of these apartments?
Oh, I don't remember. They're like 2-bedroom and then lots of bathrooms, and 3-bedroom and lots of bathrooms. Is that right?
So we're not talking tiny houses, just...
No, but they're all townhomes, so they all
anywhere from 12 to 1,500 square feet, give or take.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Tiny bathrooms. So any other questions? Okay, so I'll be bringing this Monday. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the having Siemens become a historic building. One thing that I really like about the 2 or the 3 things that 4 things we're covering tonight is that they've all bubbled up out of either citizens who brought ideas forward, or they came from the commissions that we've created in the city to bring forward ideas. And that's why it makes it so exciting. So we had the housing from the affordable housing people, and now this from the Historic Commission, who've been working super hard on the Siemens project and another project that we'll talk about in a minute. Everybody knows and loves Siemens. So this particular historic designation will be able to qualify that area for a DRD. And we have done several downtown redevelopment districts. That was a good one. And I think the best one that people know right now is Stumac, and their incredibly beautiful restoration of that building. So this is really exciting because Siemens is an awesome local place forever, but it has some really classic architectural things, but also they have nice neon. We don't have much neon in the city. So we have somebody from the Historic Commission here, John Valentour. Would you like to say anything, please? Thank you. You have to, your mic.
You're on mute, John.
Down in the corner. left corner. There.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, we've, just like the STMAC building, and we reviewed and we try to review these structures that are actually not within the actual downtown district where we're designated to review, and see the potential of keeping and saving and at least being a part of transitions that happen in buildings that have historical significance in Athens. And Siemens is something, or is one building that most people might overlook as being significant historically. But if you look at it closely and see that the significance of a 1950s building, we determined that this structure was worthy of consideration and saving. And what this means is that any modifications in the future to that structure will have to come through our board for review to make sure that it's not out of character with what we determined as being historically significant for Athens.
Right. The owner, Mr. Siemens, has written a letter asking us to do this also. And I think that it's probably, once now it's out into the community, it will be highly thought of and very much supported, because we do, especially now in COVID time, we all are trying to rediscover our local qualities, and Siemens is one of the gems. So any questions? Ms. Medley?
Thank you, Member Fall, and thank you, Mr. Valentor, for being here tonight. I was super excited to see this. Obviously, having this business, which is on the west side, be highlighted in this way. And I'm a frequent patron of Siemens, so I was excited for that reason as well. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the benefits of a DRD, what could come of this, and could you also kind of give us a sense of what that 10-acre area would be? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Paul, do you want to do that?
I know I was on mute. Yes, I can cover that in a little bit more detail. Mayor Patterson may as well. The Downtown Redevelopment District, that is, it's a economic development tool under Ohio Revised Code that has a lot of flexibility with it. It actually has more flexibility than a TIF, but it's a similar concept as a TIF as far as how the financing works. A DRD district needs to be 10 acres or less. That real estate needs to be contiguous. And within a DRD, it needs to have either a locally designated, state designated, or nationally on the National Register historic property. And one of the goals of that is in the state's perspective is to try to protect historic buildings within municipalities. We had several conversations with the Siemens family to explain what that meant. When you the benefits to them, as well as like Mr. Valentor referenced, that they would have to be reviewed by our historic preservation district, or excuse me, our historic preservation board if they wanted to make changes to their property. And Siemens family is well aware of that. They're invested in that neighborhood. They're 3 generations strong right now, and they don't expect to go anywhere. So that's to them, this was really exciting. With revenues from a DRD, similar to the TIF, the existing value of a property, that money will continue to be distributed as normal to the taxing authorities. Any increase in value, portions of that would be set aside for the DRD for a period of, I believe, 10 years. And then it would go back to a regular tax assessment, cutting the pie. The DRD for Siemens, I'll try to bring that up while we're talking here. You may have to bear with me for a moment or two. I know I have it on my folder, my files somewhere, but it incorporates the Siemens property, which is goes all the way to what's actually the old Athens Canal that runs parallel with the driveways, the main driveway from Union Street onto the parking areas of Oblenis Hospital, as well as the real estate to the immediate east of there, which includes where there's a new Oblenis building being under construction as we speak, and the Dials Hearing Clinic and the gas station that the Siemens family owns there as well. 10 acres isn't a lot of real estate when all is said and done. And so the nice thing about this is that if there is additional development that's to occur in that area in the next 10 years, if Ohio Health decides to build an additional facility on their campus, this money can be, the DRD will help cover costs for infrastructure, signage on Union Street, things like flowers and landscaping that could make sidewalks. All of those things would be opportunities or things that the DRD money could be used for. If the Seaman family were interested in building an addition onto their building, and it needs to go before the Historic Preservation Board, DRD monies could be used to support, to help cover the cost of architecture or the design that might be needed. Those additional costs, it can help set some of that, defray some of those costs for a building in that district. I'm going to stop talking for a minute and see if I can find that file, if that's okay.
While you're looking, Paul, as Paul had indicated, the name Downtown Redevelopment District is kind of a misnomer. I mean, it doesn't have to be attached to the downtown. It just has to have within its 10-acre footprint a designated historic building, which can be locally designated. It can certainly be nationally designated. A lot of you are aware that the Downtown Redevelopment District that is called 234 Washington, that is the one that uses the building in which the cider house exists. That is the historic structure that is inside that DRD. The DRDs, they're created for economic development. That's what they're for. So grants could be administered to the historic building for renovation or expansion. It can also be used to incentivize other businesses to move into the downtown redevelopment area, incentivize developments. As Paul indicated, they run for 10 years and then they sunset. And then all that increased property valuation goes back to all the entities that are entitled to that property tax increase over time. These are good tools. Again, this is one that I learned of back in 2016 at the same conference that I learned about the TIFs, the neighborhood TIFs. So we feel this is a valuable way to, again, incentivize economic development in the city of Athens. We're exploring some others, which I won't get into any details, but this will make for the third DRD in the city of Athens.
Great.
I have that map up if anybody would like me to do a share screen.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Can you all see that?
Mm-hmm.
So just to orient you, the top left-hand corner of that within that blue boundary is you can see the Siemens grocery store in there, as well as their parking lot and gas station. Dials Hearing Center as we're continuing to move east. And then what's currently the, used to be called the Gowandi Clinic, I believe, but now it's an Ohio Health Express Care or Urgent Care. And then to the south there, you can see the very, really the opportunity area within the DRD for, with a lot of available real estate for development, which includes a piece of real estate where Ohio Health is under construction as we meet this evening.
Great. Mr. Cox, you have a question? Thank you. You have to unmic.
Yep, there we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
So during this process of developing the property lines, was there any discussion about going across the street and including a portion of the fairgrounds, or is that just wasn't as please, Mayor.
No. The one thing that we learned early on when we were exploring DRDs, we did file for a third DRD, which captured part of this property that you're looking at, but we attempted to use West Union as a way to connect, and the historic buildings were going to be the Uptown Historic District, which is permissible. But what we found out after the fact from DSA is that we would get, the roadway would get counted in the overall acreage. And so to cross over to the other side, and as you can see, Member Katsas, we're already at 9.78 acres. So we really couldn't bring in more property into this DRD. We explored it for sure, but this was as good as we could get.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, great. I'll bring this forward. It does need a public hearing. Is that, I think, true? If it does, we'll have one. How's that? Okay. The next on our list is the Downtown Historic District that the map is now up for. This is another long-run plan that the Historic Preservation Commission has been working on diligently. At one point, they did hand out flyers pre-COVID time, and so this has been kind of on the back burner during that, and now we want to bring it forward. It is the traditional uptown area, kind of our festival area, I like to think of. And the district would be a National Historic District. And another reason John Valentour is here, so he can discuss it in more detail from the recommendation that they have made to council. Thank you, John.
Okay. As you can see, actually, we were working on creating a larger version of a local district for some time. And then we were in the very beginnings of having public meetings. And we had previously met with property owners from the uptown districts and the outlying area. But because of everything that's happened, we decided that maybe we should ask council or recommend to council at this point in time to accept the National Historic District, which was created, the Uptown Historic District was put on the National Register in 1982. And this would provide us, if you would give local designation, the Preservation Board will be able to review, provide oversight and review for projects that occur in this district to the exterior of buildings. It seems long overdue that we should probably create this local district. The thing that a lot of people get nervous about is, well, what's this going to do? Is this going to make it more difficult for people to do development in the Uptown District? And as a person who has worked a lot in the Uptown District of Athens over the years, one of my primary objectives is to make sure that that is not the case. That I've worked with the code office to develop integrate the review process from our board into the reviews that are already required by the city of Athens. So it's not to create delays in construction schedules, but actually to provide assistance to people in terms of what the exterior development of these buildings should be. We have such a variety of architecture in Athens. It's not like we were trying to preserve some moment in time, because so many of the buildings are from all different periods in architecture. But preserving the character and nature of Athens as best as possible is our objective here. And it's necessary that City Council will adopt this district as a local district for our jurisdiction.
Thank you, John. Are there any questions for Mr. Valentour or for our planner or the mayor? Okay.
I have one. I don't know if you can see me.
Okay.
Okay. I guess any of the three of you could answer this, whoever prefers to. But I guess if a new business owner wants to come in and put a business in that district, exactly what would they have to do? Would they have to make the business kind of historical looking, or are there certain parameters that they'd have to fit in, or how would we talk to the new business owners?
First of all, if there's no exterior modifications to the business, then that would, and we already have in Athens signage codes that is already reviewed by the code office. It's only if they wanted to make exterior modifications to that building.
Okay.
It could be paint colors. It could be changing windows. It could be exterior doors, anything. And it's not like if they were going to replace the doors, replace the windows, we would like to give them advice as to what would be appropriate in that condition.
Wait, may I ask a follow-up? All of that sounds really good to me.
Yes.
But we need jobs so badly in our community right now. What if a business owner said, okay, my brand is bright orange and purple, and that's what the exterior of my business is going to be, or I'm not going to come here and create jobs? That would be a really difficult situation.
It could be.
I assume you're not really pro orange and purple, but I don't really know.
May I weigh in on that really quick?
I understand what you're saying.
Yes, please. Paul.
The standard for review is the U.S. Department of the Interior Standards for Historic Preservation. Those guidelines offer a lot of flexibility. Specifically, paint colors and things like that are not part of those guidelines. Just to be on that scenario specific that you're asking about.
Okay.
That is something when communities and neighborhoods have additional guidelines. They sometimes they create guideline books that are specific to the architectural features and character of their specific district. When they get into that level of detail, they can look at those requirements and say, these are the traditional paint colors of this type of architecture from the early 1900s, or something like that, and they can have some control over that. That being said, Department of the Interior standards in this situation would not apply. Bright orange, etc. They could, in theory, they could do that. The goal of the preservation board at that point would be to have a conversation about those pros and cons. Second, to your point about the economic development standpoint, there is countless studies out there that show that historic districts that have local control over design review, that the properties are worth more money, that the rents are higher, and that they are more advantageous to businesses to open up in, to draw tourists to them. And they're incredibly important to the surrounding community, to the campus, et cetera. And so when we're thinking about how does the city of Athens be competitive, how do we put our best foot forward, how do we put our best look forward, one of the best things we have is our Uptown District. And so looking at it from that perspective, it actually does make us more competitive. It makes the city more attractive to parents who are looking at locations for their kids to go to college. And for people who want to come uptown and visit, they want to spend their money in our stores and participate in the local economy.
That was a very helpful answer. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you.
Mr. Cox.
Yes, thank you. And so I just I don't know if I should announce this or not. I just returned from Sanibel Island down in Florida, and they adopted something similar to this, where they wanted to maintain a certain look throughout their main street, Periwinkle, and the largest companies, Dairy Queen, they comply. Their signs are no more than 2 feet off the ground. So it's not the brand of the specific business; it's the brand of our community that we're talking about here, and that we're trying to preserve, a cohesive look throughout that area.
Right. Yeah. And other places have done the same thing, even around in Ohio too. Member Smedley?
Thank you, Member Fall. And thanks again, Mr. Valentin, for that explanation. My main question was going to be, why do we need a local designation if we have the national designation? And you've answered that for me. It provides that local control. Currently, is there a process that businesses have to go through to make those exterior changes based on the fact that they have the national designation, or will this local designation create that?
Currently, there's none. The only time businesses would go through our board is if they want to get some kind of national assistance in their buildings. West Union Street did, and required the board, at least the board helped the owners with providing documentation to the national district for historic preservation to get grants and to get assistance in renovation. Right now, there's none. We have no authorization whatsoever as our board to do anything uptown unless people ask for it, but there's no requirement. And I understand both your concerns, and that's why I think that making the procedure as easy and understandable and as possible is going to increase the ability of the property owners to run the modifications through the system. Nothing is worse than having to be delayed, especially if you're trying to open up some kind of a restaurant or a pizza, and then all of a sudden you have to wait 3 months to get approval. That's not acceptable. I know that because I've had to go through these kind of things, and I know that that's not good for the economics of the district. So we've already talked as a board about expediting any kind of reviews. And in my experience, I found in the past that most property owners are always looking for advice as to what can I do here? And I don't think that our participation will be anything but beneficial for not only Athens, but for the owners of the businesses that are moving in.
Right. Thank you. Paul, did you have some comments?
Yeah, just to be clear, a building that's on the National Registry, that's essentially just recognizing that a building was historic. There's no requirements that a property owner of a building that's on the National Registry they can make any modifications that they want to a historic building. They can tear it down. They can build additions to it. They can put siding on it that's inappropriate. They can change windows. They can do anything they want to that building, and still be recognized as on the National Registry. The federal government puts the requirement for review of historic districts and historic properties on municipal governments to identify them, to locally designate them. And then from that point forward, if a city has a historic preservation ordinance, which we do, Title 45, and a qualified historic preservation board, which we do, meets the standards of the state of Ohio's Historic Preservation Board or Historic Preservation Office. At that point, if a municipality supports it, then a local review can take place. It's also possible that modifications that are inappropriate for a historic building, that so many of them are made, that a district could actually lose its status as a historic district, or a building could lose its status because it's no longer, so many changes have been made that the historic integrity is gone. So one of the strategies to make sure that we don't lose the historic integrity, we've seen some of that ever since 1982. Some of those buildings have been changed significantly. And so this is really the only opportunity we would have to try to slow that down, to try to make sure that these buildings remain historic. It is also important to note that when work is done on historic buildings that's appropriate for them, that property owners are then eligible for historic preservation tax credits from the state and from the U.S. Department of the Interior. So there are financial benefits to them when they're doing major changes on buildings.
Right. Well, also, in the future, when there's, in the future, there might be grants that are associated with it because of better increased funding of certain things in the future. So, any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you, John, for being here. I just want to say thank you so much for all the work that the commission has been doing. It's awesome. Thank you. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is solar power and solar access for Athens. This was put forward by yet another committee that Sam Kroll works with, the Sustainability Commission. And they put it forward. Right now, we are a solar smart city, meaning that we support solar access and solar power and through processes and different things. It's been suggested that if we change our Title 23 zoning code in just a little few ways, then we can begin the process of becoming Soul Smart Silver. So this is something that's been put forward by the commission. It has a huge amount of support from other commissions and a lot of people. We've been working with the Rural Action on this. And Sarah, what's her last name?
Conway
Ballou. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Conway Ballou. I always say Ballou Conway. I do not know.
It's Connolly. Connolly Ballou. I may not have said it clearly.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Sarah. Okay, the big things are that it changes the definition of what a solar energy system is. It puts solar energy systems under Title 23.04, permitted uses and permitted accessory use. So that means that you don't have to go and get a special building permit or go through like the Zoning Board of Appeals if you want to do it. It's an approved accessory condition. And there's a height exemption from height for certain types of solar panels on flat and pitched roofs. So am I missing anything else here, Paul or the Steve, Mayor? Okay, Sam.
Thank you, Member Fall. You're not missing anything that I am aware of. I'll just say that Sarah Conley-Ballou has worked very hard and done her due diligence on this, and this will just continue to make our community very solar friendly. And as we move into further projects, this designation from Soul Smart will be very good for the city to have. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Ms. Klopp-Pelter.
I'm really glad to see this proposal coming up. I was talking to Sarah Conley-Ballou about it last fall, and I'm just really glad to see that it is now being considered by City Council. The more we can do to help people go solar, the better, and it will make our community much more attractive to future companies and people who want to do remote work. So this is fantastic. I hope everybody will vote to approve it.
Great. Any other questions? Paul.
I just would like two comments to make. One of which is that this has been vetted by two of your boards and commissions, the Sustainability Commission as well as the city's Planning Commission. So I don't know if we've ever had that happen in the 12 years I've been in Athens. So that alone I think is pretty cool. Secondly, just as a reminder to council, when several of us, and Sarah Conley-Ballou was the lead on this, several of us were having meetings to try to move some of this forward. Our initial strategy was actually to bring this forward as a legislative item to commemorate Earth Day in April. And everything got put on hold because of coronavirus. And so now this was trying to get this back on track from something that we thought would have been settled 4 or 5 months ago. So that itself, I think, I look at that as a success that we're able to be working upon things from earlier this year that we lost track of for a few months.
Yeah,
thank you.
Good, Mayor. Thank you, Paul. Mayor?
when I go to the National League of Cities conferences, I always meet with the Soul Smart people. And one of the things that I've been really trying to have them consider, for the city of Athens is our carbon fee, which they are quite impressed with. But unfortunately, it doesn't fit in any of the boxes that are required to check off to go from bronze to silver and then to gold. But hopefully they will reconsider and at least acknowledge that the city of Athens is doing far more than some other communities across the nation when it comes to trying to be as sustainable and responsible as possible.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you for all your and I'm going to write a letter to Sarah and tell her that I'm really super sorry about butchering her last name. So anyway, the last item on our very long list is weeds. We always are worried about weeds. This is actually a change to the general rules, Title 9 in our code, which is the weeds section that says you shall mow if it's over a certain height. We are changing it to include 3 basic things so that it matches with the landscaping ordinances that are being changed and coming through, so they can all go together. It says that the height restrictions and such are that if you are a native and pollinator friendly Athens yard program member, that you are exempt from the height and the height and those issues. However, if you cannot have noxious weeds or invasives, those are not exempt. So you cannot have a whole yard of pokeweed or Japanese knotwood and say that's my yard because that's an invasive species. Okay. So it puts, and then in that, we redid the wording for what it's a noxious species and height arrangement to make it easier to understand and more specific to species types. And we also increased from 8 inches of the required height that can't go over to 10 inches, because that's now a best management practice, and it also will mean that there's be less mowing in Athens, which saves fuel and our ears. So, any questions, comments? It's exciting. Weeds are exciting. Sam.
Yeah, I would just like to make sure I understand. Not only can you not have a full garden of invasive species such as knotwood, but you need that you need to be in the registration program to have a registered native and pollinator friendly yard, right, to be exempt from the restrictions. Correct?
Yes, right. And that goes with the new program that we talked about a couple weeks ago at the other committee meeting. So they're all kind of catching up, and when they all catch up, then I'll introduce it to council. But I think there's another one that needs to catch up. So you pull on one string and there's other stuff that comes out. But I do want to say, one of the things that what Sam was talking about is that when COVID hit and everything closed down, it was, the Earth Day celebration and the Athens Beautification Day, which was going to try to, plant 800 trees. And all those things just got completely blown up. But now we're getting back on track. And that there's other programs like some of the stuff that Sam's and the Sustainability Office has been working with. So we're going forward, fulfilling that, the resolution that we passed in January, Resolution 2, having a climate emergency, because we still do, thank you. So thank you very much for putting up with stuff. Member Smedley.
Thanks, Member Fall. My only concern, which I think you addressed already, was seeing that the inch allowable height that a non-designated yard could grow to went from 8 to 10. But when you explained it was part of a best practice change and also mentioning it mean less mowing, that does make sense. But I was just primarily concerned with people who have a problematic yard in their neighborhood, and then they just have to wait that much longer for it to be addressed. But I don't know how prevalent that is even an issue. So that was the only thought that I had. But your explanation made sense. So thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Great. Oh, Jeff.
This may be slightly off track and not covered by what you're proposing, but I've noticed in the last few years, among at least in my neighborhood and some others, people are using a particular long-leafed, bladed, I think they call it pampas grasses, that grow very tall. They look green in the spring.
Oh, the fuzzy pampas grass? Yeah.
Possibly. I don't know the name of it. I'm not a botanist, even though I pretend to be. But to me, this looks very dangerous, especially in this time of climate change. We see the entire West Coast is basically on fire. We're getting drier and drier spells. We've had a recent rain, but I keep track of rainfall, and I've been noticing that we can go now almost 2 full weeks without a single drop. Then we'll get an inch of rain, and then another 2 weeks of drought. And that's just drying things out, and those things look like fire hazards to me.
Right. When you look at on a private property, residential private property, there are few. The state has preeminence when it comes to those sort of things. Just like the state has has exempted them, our ability to say, like to Lowe's, you can't plant those. But individual citizens can complain to the state that somebody is selling really invasive species, because they're, so that's something that we don't have control over. This is mostly, the landscaping ordinance is mostly for commercial ordinance and stuff. So that, that's a separate issue, and we don't really have much control over that. So,
I see.
Yeah, unless the fire, unless something comes through the fire chief, or something. So, okay, great. Thank you. Sarah, you want to say something?
I just wanted to publicly acknowledge a comment that came through that people might want to check with the Athens Soil and Water Conservancy for information on pollinator plots and perhaps seed packets for non-invasive pollinators.
Well, and with when the pollinator, we have to figure out a shorter name for that program. When that comes up, it will have guidelines and examples and those sort of things. It is modeled after a Bee City USA program that they do. So, okay. Any other questions? Great. Well, thank you for hanging out with me. It's all yours, Sam.
All right, we're going to move on to finance and personnel. Councilmember Crowell is chairing this, and Councilmembers Reisner, Katsas, and Smedley are also on that committee. I will note briefly that we do have 2 other items that came up that are rather pressing that Chair Crowell will mention, one on appropriations, one on amending an MOU for our CARES Act legislation passed last week. And Councilmember Crowell, thank you.
Thank you, President Nisley. Yes, we do have a number of appropriation and transfer issues that I will all handle together. But the first item on our agenda is the pumper truck. We have a 1-year note. That note is due on October 16th. The total that we owe on that note is $226,650.96, I believe. Maybe it's 46 cents. Can't read my own writing. In the past, we have paid down $100,000, and that is the amount that's already appropriated in the budget. The auditor and the mayor recommend that we do $100,000 again this year. Note that $50,000 comes from Ohio University. So we would be matching Ohio University's amount for that, for paying down that note. So is there any questions from the committee about the pumper truck note?
Nope.
Okay. Anyone else on council like to address anything about the pumper truck? We need our pumper truck, and we are glad we are paying down our note on the pumper truck. Okay. Well, we will move forward then. So the next item is a transfer, a CDBG transfer. Those are community development block grants. And just to remind everybody, we receive, as part of CDBG grant funds that we receive, they include funds to administer those grants. In the past, we have simply left those specific funds for administration of the grants in the general CDBG fund to use for other projects. But the city was audited this year, and the grantor wants those specific administrative funds actually transferred to the departments that do the paperwork. We just need to do this before the end of the year. It's a total of $11,300. And this is really just an accounting mechanism to make sure that these funds are in the departments, in the funds that they need to be for auditing purposes. Any questions about the CDBG transfer? Okay, thank you very much. Also been brought to my attention that the community center will need an additional transfer to continue their operations. This would be from 273 to 270. And it is recommended by the auditor that we transfer $20,000. We all know the changes that have happened during the pandemic to different departments in the city, and the community center has been hit pretty hard in terms of the revenue they're able to generate with their programs. Just to remind everyone that we have transferred I think either $60,000 or $80,000 already since May into 270 to meet the community center's requirements. I can double check that, but we will be discussing next Monday this transfer, or we will be putting this forward. Any discussion on this request? Yes, Member Smedley.
Member Crow. In the past, I recall we made transfers to cover refunds and such that were unexpected. Do you have more details about what this will go to specifically in the community center budget?
I do not. I do believe that Director Moore will be joining us in a couple of weeks, and we could get some additional information. I don't believe Auditor Hecht is with us today. I don't know if the mayor has any additional information about that. Okay, so no, I'm sorry, Member Smedley, I don't have any additional information. President Isley?
I thought that this was just basic ongoing operating costs and includes also some salary monies. But we'll get those details confirmed from the auditor. Thank you.
Any other questions? Committee and other members of council, administration? Okay, thank you very much. I did find my note that by transferring that 20, that would make a total of $80,000 that has been moved into 270 since May. So it would not be 100,000, it would be a total of 80,000. Also, discussion that the auditor, and again, I apologize, I don't have a lot of information on this either, but I know that there are a lot of items that are of an emergency nature as we deal with our changes to our revenue. But the auditor did indicate that there is an appropriation shortage in our internal service fund, Fund 865. So there will have to be an appropriation there. But I also do not have any figures to share with you. Yes, Member Smedley.
Thank you, Member Crowell. What is that line item exactly?
That is a good question. It came in a little bit late to me, and I was not able to do research on it.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. Let me look here quickly.
We can get that from council member, from the auditor also, but I believe this may be the internal service fund that is charged to the different administrative departments within the city to cover the internal services. But
I believe you're right, President Nisley, that we have many different departments, but we all share certain features like the internet, the web, servers, copying services, that sort of thing. So somehow there's a magic formula that has been derived that says that each department has used a certain percentage and should share the costs thereof. And so it's split out that way. So, but I'm kind of having a hard time wrapping my head around how there could be a shortage, though. If anything, at the beginning of the year, it would have been a significant part of the budget set aside. And anyway, I hope to hear more about this later.
I appreciate your information, Member Reisner. This was late Friday when the auditor's office became aware of a shortage in 865, the internal service fund, that we could bring up today. Unfortunately, I don't have additional information on it, but we will ask the auditor to get that information to everybody so that we are prepared for the concrete information next week.
Good deal.
Okay. Thank you. And then another item that came up rather quickly is that we have the HAPCAP has been reviewing the contract for the Utilities Assistance Emergency Relief Grant Program that we have started with them, and they have found a portion of that contract that they believe needs to be reworded. And the, hold on here just a second. The issue is on the percentage of, let's see. I'm sorry, here it is. Lisa has indicated that this kind of change would have to go back through council as an amendment, so which is why I'm bringing up today. The language they would like to change is under Section 17 compensation. The language should be the grantor will compensate the grantee for administration services for project implementation based on actual expense not to exceed 7% of the total grant award or $5,250. HAPCAP, Director Hattis does believe that this was our understanding between the city and HAPCAP, but the clarification has been asked to be made in the contract language from HAPCAP's Chief Financial Officer. So if we are agreeable to that and we can send them a new page of that contract, then they can do that, get that executed quickly. So I believe on Monday, President Nisley, we would suspend the rules to pass that quickly so that we don't have any delay in getting the program moving to get funds to people who do need that utility assistance.
Right. And as I understand, looking at the wording, I mean, it's minor, but I understand how HAPCAP thinks it's significant, and so that seems fine. It seems to me that they've rearranged several of the phrases, so the administrative fee remains 7%.
Right.
The cap remains 5,250, but they have inserted the clause based on actual expense. So that's the primary change that we're going to be amending that ordinance to incorporate that. Yeah.
Member Katsas.
Yes, thank you. So where does the program stand right now? Are people reaching out for it, and are they being engaged with the status of it? Because I assume we can't go forward with it until this contract has been amended.
That's accurate. That it can't go forward until this is amended and we get the language changed. But there are people who are interested in applying for this, much like people who have already applied for and received funding for mortgage/rent relief. So if we can get this through, and I agree with President Nisley. I've looked it over as well. The language change, just the statement of is it actual expenses? I mean, it's pretty simple, the changes that are in place, but I believe that it's the CFO for HAPCAP that feels that this is important on HAPCAP's end to have this language in there. And if we can expedite this through, it'll still be launched and people will have plenty of time to apply for this particular grant.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Member Clodfelder?
I very much agree with Mayor Patterson that we should try to expedite this as quickly as possible so nobody gets their water shut off in the town of Athens. I just think it's really important to help people right now during this economic turn down. And so I just wonder if there's any appropriate mechanism by which we might be able to approve this tonight if everybody who has seen the document is okay with it.
To answer your question, no.
Okay.
Are water shutoffs currently happening? I saw you shaking your head, Mayor Patterson.
I was shaking my head for those who couldn't see me or hear my head shaking. We are not. We are not. We have not shut off water to any resident due to COVID-19 in the city of Athens. Although there, again, I've shared with council, there's certainly need because we have citizens that are struggling with a lot of their bills and to include their utility bills.
Member Smedley?
Thanks, Member Crow. Could we get a report, a status update next committee or next regular session, whenever it's appropriate, on how much progress we're making on getting folks connected with the mortgage and rent assistance? And then maybe after a month of the utilities one, get a sense of how many people are taking advantage. I'm just curious if the word's getting out or if there's as much of a demand as we think there is, that kind of thing.
I would be absolutely in favor of giving you a monthly report, and I can at the next city council meeting, regular session, I can give you, or at least provide that information that I have received from Glenn Crippen to date so that people are aware of what has been used. Some interesting information that I just was made aware of last week is that the Center for Disease Control, CDC, has come out with a moratorium on evictions, and so that is helpful as well. So we may not see, well, that moratorium is predicated upon individuals taking advantage of any, any assistance programs that are out there. So we'll see how the remainder of our housing assistance, rent and mortgage assistance program continues to work. So I'd be more than happy to give updates on both of these on a monthly basis if council thinks every month is adequate.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Member Smedley. That's excellent. Excellent question. It would be nice to have those updates. And as COVID relief funds come in, obviously we all want to use them and help the population as in any way possible. And these two grant programs are certainly one way to do that. Any other questions from council regarding this language change. Okay, the next item is the public defender contract. This is an annual bit of council business. Last year, we authorized $100,000 for the 2020 calendar year for the public defender's office. We expended, or we actually will end up expending in the 2020 calendar year, $77,424.62. So we will have leftover money from the appropriation. So we will need to determine whether we want to, for 2021, do again $100,000 for this contract, or perhaps go a bit lower. It's been proposed that we do $90,000. Again, I would appreciate, I only know last year's actual expenditures. It would be obviously helpful to have a series of years so we could look at what the target amount should be for this coming year. Are there any questions about the public defender contract?
Yeah, I have one.
Member Reisner, go ahead.
Don't we share the cost with the county for public defender?
Yes, this is I mean, this is the mayor's, it's authorizing the mayor to have an agreement with the county commissioners.
Correct.
But that $100,000 is fully from the city. So I don't know what portion, right? But yes, it is with the county commissioners.
And isn't there some sort of crazy overlap of calendar years because of this?
Mayor?
That's accurate, Councilmember Reisner. I can't remember what that is off the top.
Yeah, like we're off like 3 or 4 months. We're offset for some strange reason, and consequently the amount of monies that we are going for are not necessarily a 12-month calendar year, are they? It's a strange system, and I've been doing this for 9 years and I still haven't figured it out. That's my comment.
Well, unless Member Smedley knows what the answer is, Mr. Reisner, I don't have an answer for you. But Member Smedley?
Thank you, Member Carl. I do not. I was just curious to know, we don't have to answer it tonight if we don't know it, obviously, is if the difference with actuals versus budgeted, if we know that had something to do with COVID, or if it was other reasons why it was different. And the recommendation for 90,000, you said, was that coming from the auditor's office?
That was a suggestion actually from the mayor's office. It
from
came
the mayor's office.
From Patty.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Member Grace.
Thank you. I just wonder if I know that the public defender's office recently had an attorney leave their office to go somewhere else, and I know that they have been understaffed even before that. So I would just hope that we have communication from the director there, because I believe they're advertising to hire at least one public defender, and so I just wonder if we have communication from their office that would suggest that there would be a change going forward if their staffing levels have changed or are anticipated to change. Sorry.
Yeah, I think we do need more information. Okay, any other commentary on the public? Yes, Member Clodfelder.
I do think it's really wise to talk to the director of that office just to check on what the expected spending levels might be if they have to recruit somebody. But if by chance we get a green light from that director, then my 2 cents are that $90,000 would be appropriate, because they didn't use all of the 100, but that would give them a little more leeway, and it wouldn't make them think that they have to count every penny and dime. So I think that sounds like a good compromise figure.
Thank you. Good point. Okay, thank you. And the last item on the Finance and Personnel agenda is an Arts West update. And I would like, if Member Smedley would like to speak to this first, or we can just go right to the mayor and ask him to, Mayor, please tell us about Arts West.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Kroll. So to give everyone an update, kind of an overview, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and the series of orders that came down, or directives from Governor DeWine's office in terms of closures of a whole sundry of different businesses and operations. Arts West fell under that Arts West was closed. And on August 25th, the interim health director came out with a rescinding order of that particular the particular element that is entertainment venues. And so that has been walked back. There are pretty detailed guidelines as to how entertainment venues can be reopened again. If you have a fixed seating venue, 15% of that seating capacity is what can be utilized. So again, it's pretty restrictive in terms of the reopening of entertainment venues. Since Arts West doesn't have fixed seating, we will likely use something similar to the fire code capacity number and work it that way. But at the end of the day, it still has to follow in line with the 6-foot separation between individuals, the social distancing. That is also part of the entertainment venue directive that has come down. So that went into effect at 11:59 p.m. on August 25th. So now that has changed, that we have given direction to the Director of Arts, Parks, and Recreation, since Director Moore, this is her venue, at least she manages it overall, along with all the other portions or elements that fall under Arts, Parks, and Recreation. One of the things that I have been exploring is that we're not anywhere near being out of the woods with the pandemic. As a matter of fact, our numbers, as council, I'm sure, has been watching, are going up again. Luckily, as I've been tracking it, it isn't going up as steep as what we saw back in July, but it is going up. It's significant. I think that needs to be also mentioned as I'm talking about the reopening of Arts West. But what I think we see as a real opportunity is that under the CARES Act funding guidance, we can use the CARES Act money for things that are IT related. And so what I am exploring is having possibly, and I'm saying possibly, having fiber go from the city building up to Arts West, which will certainly allow for the ability to do virtual programming out of Arts West, and having Arts West become a true virtually programmed venue. Also looking at some other things, but what I really need is for Director Moore, when she comes back from her family medical leave, she'll be coming back, and I would like for her to speak directly to council as to what that's going to look like. But I've given her the direction that we do need to look at reopening Arts West soon. And again, like I said, I'd mentioned, one of the things that is sorely needed at Arts West would be something like having fiber to the building itself so that we have reliable broadband at that building, which could open up the opportunities, by the way, for there to be community Wi-Fi in the parking lot area of Arts West, which would certainly complement what I know our school system is having to work through with making sure that K through 12 is able to get their homework accomplished, work accomplished, whatever. But again, we see an opportunity in utilizing our CARES Act money in an effective way. Because again, we don't know what the winter is going to look like. We don't know what the spring is going to look like. We may be in a position to have to do virtual programming out of Arts West for quite some time to come.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Member Smedley.
Thank you, Member Crowell, and thank you, Mayor, for that update. Sorry, Director Moore couldn't be here, but I'm glad to know that she's slated to be here in the future. First off, I know this has been a difficult situation to navigate and to juggle. We're managing a city under a pandemic, and its financial impact on our city's budget as well. I also appreciate the engagement that we've received from the community. There's been obviously a great response to the decision to close Arts West. And so we have a better appreciation and understanding of its value to the community. So I appreciate, Mayor, you're revisiting that. So I have a few questions, and you may not know the answers right now, and that's okay. Do you have a timeline for a reopen? And I know you mentioned that's also part of Director Moore's directive at this point. And would that include bringing back the program specialist? And I say that with the understanding that we just talked about having to move funds into the Arts, Parks, and Rec budget because of its struggles financially. So I understand that, but I'm just curious to know to what extent could we see that happening anytime soon? Thank you.
So, well, to your question about the reopening, I mean, yes, that could happen soon, but it's going to require Director Moore looking at how that happens as she moves forward, what staffing would look like. You know, one of the things that I think everyone needs to be aware of is that, you know, the one department in the city that is heavily dependent upon programming and, you know, generating revenue that comes into Arts, Parks, and Rec through the programming. You know, we recognized early on, as an example, that when the order came down for what would be required for a swimming pool, aquatic center, whatever, that financially that just was not going to work in terms of the guidelines that we received from the Ohio Department of Health and from the governor's office. It financially, again, and it's a facility that everyone's aware of this. The pool is a facility that relies heavily on family memberships, season memberships. And we realized that with the capacity limitations that pool would have, that it would not be financially conceivable to have that particular asset open. The same holds true with other functions of Arts, Parks, and Rec, you know, at the community center with you know, with yoga, with cardio kickboxing, you know, name the different things that go on in the community center. I'm sorry, yeah, at the community center, you know, trying to make sure that they can socially distance, especially in an area where you are exerting yourself and breathing heavy, and, you know, the potential for spread is certainly there, yet the revenue they're dependent on is having classes of size X. So Terry Moore will be exploring what things will look like at Arts West with Arts West reopening. But again, I really believe that for us to have reliable broadband up to that building, it's certainly going to make it easier to do virtual programming out of that particular site itself. So we'll explore. The other thing too, you know, I think that council needs to recognize is that unfortunately the strings attached to the CARES Act money, in some cases, almost put unrealistic timelines in which to utilize that money. But I think that with something like this, because I've seen one estimate as to what fiber could cost up to the Arts West, that it is achievable. It's just having to we're spending a lot of time working on making that happen. David Dudding, the director of IT, he's engaged. We're actually meeting Wednesday to discuss this in particular. I too I need to acknowledge that I have received emails from a lot of citizens, and I am certainly appreciative of everything that people have said. I've actually met with groups, some of them who are participating or participants here tonight. I've met at length with individuals and kind of thinking through how we can get Arts West up and running again. So, again, I'm leaning on the director for Arts, Parks, and Recreation to get the Arts West open soon, not waiting until January to get it reopened, but also exploring ways in which we can hurry up and get some level of virtual programming associated with that facility so that they can start generating some revenue again.
Go ahead, Member Smedley.
Thank you, Member Crowell. And Mayor, I really appreciate that too, that creative thinking of using those funds in a way that makes sense, but also will create value far beyond COVID-19. Bringing that fiber to Arts West, it's going to impact our community far into the future. So I appreciate that. What I would like to see, again, just given the community response, and I think this might be appreciated of others as well, is just a plan in place, just to give us a sense of what does the future of Arts West look like, whether it's phased or what, in terms of, maybe you start virtual and then you expand on to allowing programming in person. So we have a roadmap as we move forward. The other comment I wanted to make too was, on Friday, I saw a post from the community center's Facebook page about the programming that they're doing, and it's relating to sports and activities that are being done in person. And so then my question is, if we can do it there, can we do this at Arts West too? And I hope that will all be answered soon once Director Moore has a chance to outline what will be the future of Arts West.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I personally don't see it necessarily as phased, because we do have the Southeast Ohio Music Lending Library there. But, that too poses its own challenges under a virus that we still don't completely understand behaviorally, how this virus is behaving. We all used to think that it was droplets at first, and now we know that it is airborne as well. So it's just, that's forever changing. But again, when Director Moore is back, I've already instructed her that this is the top of the list. This is the top of the list to get things going again.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the Arts West update? I'll just say that I appreciate the conversation and the information from the mayor. I also appreciate the mayor's office thinking creatively about use of some of the funds available from COVID. The public should know that it's quite a challenge to not only meet the deadlines that are been put in place by the state and the federal government, but also the restrictions as to how you can use some of those funding. So I appreciate the mayor's office looking creatively and support the use of those funds for broadband at Arts West. But I realize that's a later conversation, and that I look forward to hearing directly from Director Moore and having a good conversation with her in 2 weeks. And I hope the community comes back to engage in that conversation. The community should also know that the communications that are sent directly to the mayor's office or to city council are sent to all of us. And And I read every one of them and respond to the vast majority of them. And I really appreciate hearing from the community. So please continue to do so. And that will close Finance and Personnel. Thank you, President Nisley.
Thank you. Okay. We will meet on Monday night for a regular session of council. And